Hello everyone and welcome to the Fishhead Creations podcast, where I pull out one of my interesting knitting projects every time and talk you through the details. Sorry, I haven't really spoken to anyone today, so here we go. For once it's been a Monday where my co-workers didn't need me in a call that was supposed to be a short one and then took 2 hours. So I haven't really spoken to anyone today, because I work by email. There's lawn mowing going on outside. I have closed my windows. I hope you cannot hear it because it's annoying me for hours. So yeah, I shut them out, but they tend to be just under my window as soon as I hit record. So we shall see what happens. Also, I have my phone on loud every time I record, just because I need the alarms, because my camera can only record in 5-minute increments. So if you hear any buzzing noise next to me, I'm sorry. Also, I'm sorry, as well on that note, for not recording in such a long time. I wanted to record 2 weeks ago and what happened that day? I had to be on a very not really helpful 2-hour call for my PhD. I got to knit through it, that was okay, but yeah. That took up all of my afternoon on that day, so I didn't have any time to record. Then last week I wanted to record. My boyfriend was off work and was home all day, and even if he's in the other room with a headset on, talking to his people on the internet while gaming, I cannot record while he's home, because if I tell him not to come out of the room, that's exactly when he will come out of the room, just to distract me. So I cannot record when he's home. So yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be away for such a long time, but on the other hand, I have finished 2 garments in the meantime, so I have some content for you, and one of them I will talk about today. You may have seen this on Instagram already if you follow me there. By the way, as always, apparently, I did not introduce myself. My name is Anna. You can find me on Ravelry as Upsti and on Instagram as Caledoniana. You can also find my designs on Instagram and the podcast and design group, which is Fishhead Creations. And I will link to all those places in the description box, which you know by now because I always forget and then tell you at the end of the podcast. So yeah, you may have seen this on Instagram. And if I only show you this bit, it may even look familiar. This is kind of the Summer Cardigan 2020 by Maya Carlson, who is head of design with the Swedish company Järbo, and she, in cooperation with her employer, always puts out a summer cardigan, which is a free pattern every year, or at least she did the last few years. And this year it was a obviously raglan shaped cardigan with the color of hen. It's supposed to have sleeves, it's supposed to be boxy, with no waist shaping, and it's supposed to be a raglan. As you can see, mine is not. So when I first saw this design, I knew immediately I wanted to knit it. And I knew immediately I really would like to knit it in this yarn, which is Clinton Nordi, which is a woolly, non-superwash 2-ply yarn by Clinton, which is discontinued, and these were my precious leftovers. I had about, I think, 100 grams of the grey and 150 grams of the darker color, and then maybe 80 grams of the white. So I knew from the beginning I wouldn't be able to get the whole thing out of grey, but I hoped that I would be able to do it this way, and for the sleeves as well. Which, as you can see, did not work out, because this almost completely used up what I had left of the grey, and I didn't want to do any Frankensteining the sleeves. I didn't want to add another grey. So when I was about here and I knew I was going to run out of yarn, I decided to just make it into a vest. This is the type of garment I wanted to explore anyway, and because, as we will get to in a moment, I had added quite significant waist shaping anyway, I figured it would be nice to wear with long sleeve dresses maybe, long sleeve tops with a skirt in winter. So yeah, I decided to just make it into a vest and to change the color when I was running out of the grey. And I hadn't tried it on since I blocked it because I wanted to keep it nice for the podcast. But I tried it on before I blocked it and before I cut the sleeve, and it did fit quite well. So I'm curious to see how it will fit into my wardrobe. But in itself, I'm quite happy with it. So let's see. It's supposed to be quite boxy, so no waist shaping, straight sides. It's supposed to be cropped, but worn with a bit of positive ease, which I didn't want. So what I did is go with a stitch cut of the smallest size here at the bust, and then take away even more at the bottom. So I would end up with quite a tight fitting 0 to negative ease garment. And the waist shaping is even exaggerated by the color work because it pulls in more than the stockinette fabric. And I think it does give quite a distinct shape, but I really like that. And also, what Maya does in her design is she has the button band in the main color, because in her design it is just the main background color from the bottom up. And I knew I wanted to have the neckline and the button band in the same color as the bottom hem, even when I was thinking I would make it into a cardigan with sleeves and with a raglan shaping she's written into the design, just because I think it pulls it all together quite nicely to have all the ribbing in the same color. So that's what I plan to do from the beginning, as well as add the waist shaping and do less ease. So I had to do some finagling around. The pattern doesn't exactly match up at the sides because I'm increasing in the pattern, but I don't think it's too obvious, and it looks quite nice. It's just a side seam. Yeah, on the sleeves there's just a bit of patterning that mirrors this bottom part, and that's part of that chart is what I used for the transition up here. I didn't just want to change color and stripe or anything. I wanted some transitional color work, so I just used what the sleeves give you anyway. But because I was knitting flat at this point, I didn't want color work every other row, because it would have meant to cut the yarn on either end. So these little drops that are at the bottom, this spotted pattern, is repeated in the sleeves, but I left it out for this transition because I didn't want more ends than necessary. And then the armhole shaping is pretty much for a satin sleeve. If you watched my episode about the orange cardigan I knit flat and then seamed up, I used those numbers, but went in even further. So it does have slightly narrower shoulders than that cardigan, and more significant decreases down here. So it comes in even further because I have so narrow shoulders, I didn't want it to sit way out. What else did I do? And then I just went around, picked up stitches at a rate of, I think, about 2 stitches for every 3 rows. And then just 1 stitch for every one I bound off here. And yeah, I think it worked out quite nicely. For the button band, I, as always, picked up 1 stitch for every 2 rounds because I have such a short row gauge and I want my button bands to lay flat. So I always pick up very few stitches, then do a stretchy bind off and stretch it out very much in blocking, and it always gives me a very nice flat button band that doesn't flare anywhere. And I used my trusty black buttons because that's what I have. I tried several grey options, but they were just standing out too much, so black buttons it is. Yeah, that's really not much more to say. There's a few rows of 3 color work in this bottom band, but none of those rows do have any particularly long floats, so they are quite easy, and there's not too many of them. There's 2 in these bubbles and then a few more up here, but it's nothing too bad. It slows you down, but it's really absolutely doable. I cannot vouch for the pattern because I did basically not knit from it. I just looked at it, decided I wanted a completely different shape and only used the charts. But I do really think it's a very nice pattern. For me it just works better in this shape, but on many people who I've seen knitting this on Instagram, it really looks very nice. I think the way she's written it in a boxy cropped style, it just works best with the style of dress I don't wear. So yeah, that's why I pretty much did my own thing, as I always do. It's not ideal where this line sits on my bust, I will admit, because it does exaggerate what doesn't need exaggeration on my body, but I'm okay with it. I can work with it. And I really love this purple. When I bought it, they only had 150 grams of it, and I didn't know what to do with it. I really wanted a full garment in this color, but they didn't have enough yarn for that, and they didn't seem to get any more of it. So I just ordered what they had and decided I would use it in something, because I just really like the color. And I still have about 40 grams maybe left, so I will find some use for that. Maybe some mittens or hats. I don't know. I will find something to do with it because I really like the yarn, which unfortunately you cannot get anymore, and I'm quite sad about it. So yeah, I didn't really talk about the construction. It's knit from the bottom up, which made it easy to decide I was running out of yarn about here. So yeah, I did quite a bit of ribbing. I think I knitted on a 3mm needle, so it's about a 24-26 stitch gauge. I didn't measure, I just guessed, as I always do, you know me. It's knit from the bottom up in the round and then steeked. I knitted in the round up to the armholes and then continued flat, so those transitional colorwork bands are knit flat because I bound off for the sleeves just before starting the colorwork. And then the shoulder seams up here, which are seamed after it's finished, and then the armhole ribbing, neckband and button band are picked up later. As always, I just tack down my steek. I don't use any ribbons to cover it. It's such a nice sticky woolly wool, it will stay where it is. It hasn't gone anywhere on any of my cardigans I knit previously, so I'm pretty happy with this method. It's not much work. I used just a thinner strand of sticky wool, in this case it's Holst Super Soft, to tack it down because it will felt into place with the whole steek, but it's not as bulky as using the sport weight yarn. So that's my usual method. So I always do that when I'm doing a steek garment with what I'm talking about, with a woolly yarn, so a non-superwash yarn. And it is steeked up to the top because, here, I'm showing myself and you, it is steeked up to the top because, of course, I didn't want to knit the front into separate pieces when I could just continue in one. So yeah, it's steeked up to where the neckline ends, and then those bits for the shoulders are knit flat separately, obviously, as you do. There is a sloped bind off in the shoulders. You can kind of see when I hold it here. So it follows the natural shape of the shoulder. It's not rocket science, so there's nothing extremely innovative about this. It's just making something work when you run out of yarn. And I'm quite happy with how it turned out. I was quite disappointed I wouldn't be getting cardigan, but I think as a vest it will work in my wardrobe, and I'm quite excited for the weather to cool down so I can wear long sleeved garments with a woolly top. Right now we do have quite a nice summer, and what I consider nice because it's not that warm. The past few days were maybe 24 to 26 degrees Celsius, and that's really already out of my comfort zone. But most of the summer we've been around 18 to 20 degrees, and I totally can live with that. And we did have a bit of rain every now and then, so it's not as dry as the past few years, which is better for farmers, but really the forests need much more water still, and all the little lakes and streams and everything is just so low on water. It's still incredibly dry after the past few years. But it's been an okay summer. I could wear my jumpers most of the time. I'm wearing wool socks all the time. I can deal with that. But this one will work better over a long sleeved undergarment and then wearing this on top, and it's not quite the weather to wear that. So it lives in my wardrobe and waits for weather to come out. Weather. Sorry, that was German. Yeah, it waits for the weather when it will be able to come out and actually be worn. But I kind of should try it on. Maybe I'll do that later. We shall see. So yeah, that's all I have for you this week. I have another garment finished, so there should be a podcast in 2 weeks, and I have another garment started in quite heavyweight yarn, so 4 weeks from now that one should be finished as well. I'm doing quite well in keeping up with producing content for the podcast, actually. So yeah, enough rambling. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!